June 27th, 2006. You're standing in Dortmund Stadium in Germany, and you're crying.
I was crying because I think it was really the end of my childhood. I watched that game, and at an emotional level, I was convinced that there was something going on in that game that was not right and was not correct. And the 320-odd pages of the books and the 70 pages of notes and references and sources that I put at the end of the book explains why I think there may have been something going on in that game. I talk throughout the book about the huge multi-billion-dollar Asian gambling industry. I talk about how the fixers have destroyed the Asian soccer leagues. I've talked about how those fixers have come to European soccer leagues and are now entering in and trying to fix the same thing in European soccer. And then I showed a kind of investigative trail where I went around with those fixers as they were trying to put together a deal at one of the, the biggest international sports tournament in the world. And I'd been told 2 days before that game took place what the essential result would be. And I watched that game transfixed. And then everyone left the stadium, and I went down to the edge of the pitch, and I cried. And I know it doesn't sound very masculine, and people out there are probably thinking, what a sot this guy is. But truly, after I'd spent 2.5 years investigating this, always being skeptical, always thinking this is just nonsense, all these stories of fixing in the World Cup. And then I saw that weird game, and I was convinced.
Tell me about Chin. Is that?
That is not his real name.
Yeah.
I'm changing people's names, and I've changed some of the locations in the book. Li Chin is a well-known match fixer. It took months of negotiations to make a meeting with him. In this room, there was his aide, there was a beautiful woman, and there was him. And on the table were 2 cell phones. And the cell phones would go off every 3 or 4 minutes. And while we were talking, he would get these calls and be talking, and he said, "You see, Mr. Hill, I'm fixing the Southeast Asian Games, the soccer tournament of the Southeast Asian Games, which is like the kind of Pan America Games, for Philippines, Indonesia, blah, blah, blah. Fixing the soccer tournament." Oh, okay. Geez, And then he was saying, I've also, an associate of mine has just fixed one of these games in the German Bundesliga, and they're going to phone me and tell me the results of the game, but here's the result of the game before it plays. His essential message at that meeting or that interview is that we can't do everything, but we can get into all the big leagues and all the big tournaments. And I just thought that was bravado and nonsense. But I leave the meeting untouched. He doesn't beat me up. He doesn't think. And I immediately run home. I check the internet, and the German game comes out exactly as he predicted. 10 days later, it's discovered the Southeast Asian soccer tournament was fixed, and there were 8 Vietnamese players arrested, and 5 of them end up in jail. 2 months later, I go to a professional gambler in London who's also a source in the book. We talk in confidence to each other. I say, I think there was something maybe wrong with that game. His whole face turns white, then red, then white. He brings me over to his computer screen, which has as much information as a NASA database. And he says, look at the betting line. And 2 hours before that game, the betting line descends, like just pump. And he says, the only way something like that happens is if there's like a major injury of a star player or there's major team news. But there was nothing. There was nothing going on. So the only explanation we have is there was something weird happening. And our sources on the gambling market said there were dodgy people putting in money. 2 weeks ago, my colleagues at Der Spiegel, the German magazine, reveal that a convicted match fixer called William Iwa Lim put 2.8 million euro 2 hours before the game, exactly on the score that Li Chin had told me.
You need this mysterious interface guy who seems they call him the runner.
Yeah, it's basically they're putting together a network. Think of the fixer as being in the center of a line of people, and there are 2 sides to it. One side is the obvious one that we know. They're going to fix a game, so they're going to have to bribe some players or a referee or whatever. The other side is they're going to have to do a stock market fraud. They're going to have to go into the illegal gambling market, and they're going to have to defraud that market. So that's as difficult as fixing the soccer game. So on that side, they have what are called beards, which are literally guys who place the bets for the fixers. So the bookies don't know who's placing the bets. All they can see is that €2 million or whatever it is coming down the track. They don't know what's happening. Then you got the fixer in the center. And on the other side, connecting with the players and referees, you have what's called a runner. And they literally run back and forth from the fixer to the players. But there may not be all that much connection. It all comes through those runners. And those runners are often former national team players or former big stars who've now retired from the game. Maybe they don't have all that much money, but they certainly have the prestige to be able to walk into the dressing room, to talk to a younger player. And they can do that. They can walk in and they know what's going on. So you have the network that will go from a junior player that won't know anything to a senior player who's telling him what to do. The senior player will be hooking up with the runner. The runner will be talking to the fixer. The fixer will be placing the bets on this game that he now knows is fixed with these beards that are hiding his identity from the gambling market. So it's one long line with a fixer in the center.
You know that eventually they're going to come back and go, yeah, you were right.
Look, you don't write books trying to fight corruption to become popular. You know, I knew that when I started out. So I was ready for a wave of unpopularity. But it doesn't change that what I say in the book is true and it's shocking. And if something isn't done, soccer will become seriously diminished.
The book is The Fix, Soccer and Organized Crime. I've been speaking with the journalist Declan Hill and The Fix, published by McClelland and Stewart.